Hi, guys. This is chapter 12, media. One of the things we need to talk about is how media influences a lot. So, there are two theories that focus on media's effects that you'll see in your text. There is cultivation theory. Watching TV will gradually shape or cultivate a person's worldview or so it becomes like the worldview frequently depicted on television. Social learning theory is the second. People are more likely to imitate behavior they see frequently modeled in the media, and that behavior becomes or is rewarded, or at least not punished. The use and gratification approach, there are two principles here we need to look at. One, people make individual decisions about which media to consume. It's based on their individual differences and characteristics. So, for instance, if I'm high sensation, like to jump out of airplanes, things like that, I may look for media that kind of stimulates me in that way. The second is people that consume the same media product will respond to it in different ways depending on their individual characteristics. I like to use the example of when we when we watch the news, for instance. And when we're watching the news, you see a lot about murder and things like that, that we kind of look past it. It doesn't affect us. Now, if it's somebody we love or somebody we know, it's a different story, but we get desensitized to things over time as we get exposed. Now, there are 5 uses of media, why people will use media. One is entertainment, so just to have fun. For instance, I watch football, so football is for entertainment. So second is identity formation, so forging who I am. So a lot of these kids are video gamers and they'll watch YouTube videos of other people playing video games. 3, high sensation, seeking intense and new sensations or thrills or things like that. The next is coping. So to help me, help me de-stress, relax. A lot of you may go to work throughout the day, 9 to 5, say hypothetically, or any shift, but then come home and put the TV on to kind of relax and distress. And the last one is the youth culture identification. I feel connected to my group. If my group is watching the same show, I may start watching it so I can have conversation about it. At school, for instance, back in the day, they used to call it the water cooler talk at work. Now kids go to school, talk about the videos they watched or the TV shows they're into, things like that. Now, media and socialization, the explosion in technology has transformed the cultural environment in terms of availability and diversity of media. Adolescents draw materials from media that contribute to their own socialization, just like I was saying. Media represents what we call the broad socialization influence rather than that narrow socialization influence. Media is market driven, so providers will provide adolescents with what they believe adolescents want. Adolescence is the biggest key here in media because they have their own income if they have a job, but they also have mommy and daddy's income. So there's a lot of commercials and things like that pushed towards the adolescents to get them to spend that money. Now, media and globalization. The portrait of media socialization presented in some of your slides applies to the contemporary West. So media socialization may be quite different in traditional cultures, so remember that. And think about how media influences, think about how the impact of globalization of media influences the world. Give me your comments in the discussion section. I'm curious what you guys think. Now, television. Television has changed over the last, I'd say, 10 to 20 years. A lot of people now have cut the cord, aren't necessarily paying for cable anymore. Now they have the streaming services and things like that. But let's talk about television and aggression. Just because things have changed doesn't mean there's not aggression in television. So there's a great deal of research, or I should say there's a great deal of research attention focused on the extent to which television provokes violence in young people. Majority of violent crimes are committed by males ages 15 to 25. Between 1960 and 1990, they saw a rise in both violent crime and violent television programming. Most of the research on the issue is correlation, because we know correlation does not mean causation. So they can't prove that there's causation here. Many field studies have been conducted to address this question of whether media or aggressive television, I should say, causes aggressive people. There's a lot of research on music and aggression or violence. So also with television and video gaming and things like that. So some figures on gaming. In recent study of U.S. middle school students by Olson, which you should see in your text, that 94% reported having played computer games during the past 6 months. Of those who played those computer games, 1/3 of boys and 11% of girls said they played nearly every single day. A study in 10 European countries and Israel found that children ages 6 to 16 played more than half an hour per day on average. Now, looking at the players' perspectives here, they did a study and they interviewed boys 12 to 14 about the effects of playing violent computer games. The findings were that the boys use computer games to experience fantasies of power and fame and explore exciting new situations. For the social aspect, such as playing with friends and talking about the games with friends, or to work through feelings of anger or stress, like the cathartic effect. For instance, if I have a hard day at work, I may come home and punch the punching bag, things like that, or listen to music. I find a way to cope. Coping skills are key in de-stressing or calming down from a hard day work or a stressful day in some way. Now, computer games and aggressiveness, a majority of adolescents' favorite games involve some form or another or theme of violence. Studies have shown that playing violent computer games is related to heightened aggression, hostility, and anxiety. Make sure you look at the research in your text, because you never know, you may see it on your next test. So, music, TV, basics. Now, I have to say that I used to be a huge fan of MTV back in the day when it first came out. I actually got to watch the first video, which was Video Killed the Radio Star from the Buggles. Some of you probably have no idea who I'm talking about, but MTV was different than it is now. You didn't have like Teen Mom and all these other shows that you see on MTV, but MTV started in the U.S. in 1981. Now broadcast worldwide, representing a force in globalization. American adolescents watch MTV approximately 15 to 30 minutes per day. There are two categories when there are videos. Usually that's later at night, but you have the performance videos, just like a concert conveying the song in some way, or concept videos telling a story, like a mini movie that enacts the lyrics of the song. About 15% of the videos contain violence, usually mild versus severe violence. And about 75% contain some form of sexual themes, whether they are implied or implied or explicit, or I should say versus explicit, sorry. Now, reflecting on the research, content analysis indicates that the characters in music videos tend to be highly gender stereotyped, or at least they used to be, with the men aggressive and the women sexual and subservient. Now, things have changed in videos, and again, you're not seeing as many videos as you used to. But here's a question for you guys to bring up in the discussion section. Please, do these gender stereotypes influence adolescents' own views of gender? Make sure you read the text and maybe give an answer to that, please. Now, another thing we need to discuss when it comes to media and advertising. And one of the biggest advertisers, at least for the longest time, were Big Tobacco. Cigarettes are the second most heavily promoted consumer product in the U.S., totaling $6 billion per year. Now, remember, things have changed a little bit since these studies have been done. But we have now we have vaping and things like that. So they're not. This study was done prior to vaping being so popular. Now, is big tobacco targeting the adolescents? Well, for a long time they were. Joe Camel was a cartoon. What adult cared about a cartoon selling them cigarettes? So, yes, they were. And actually, there was a huge lawsuit against Camel concerning, and Big Tobacco concerning their advertising towards adolescents. 90% of smokers start by age 18. Ads present images of fun, independence, and coolness. You used to see these ads everywhere, whether it be in magazines, or on billboards, things like that. Now, because of the lawsuits that came out since then, you're not seeing those. But it's pretty sad how much they advertised all over the place for the longest time. According to the research, the effects of advertising on brand choice was 3 times as strong for adolescents as adults. The 3 most popular brands are the most heavily promoted. Can you tell me what the most popular brand of cigarette is? You should be able to see that in your text, so give me an answer. Make sure you look or put it in your discussion section. Now, social media is a big deal. So the use of social networking websites such as Facebook and MySpace is increasingly popular among adolescents and emerging adults. One of the things I always tell my students is be careful because what you put on your social media site can be looked at by employers. This is something that is a concern, and there has been pushes to make that illegal for employers to look at your to determine whether to hire you or not based on your social media sites. Now, interesting fact, this doesn't have to do with just you. It could be something your friends post or things like that on your site. So be very careful, because if it's posted, it's there forever. You can delete everything you want, but people can pull up your stuff. Just because you delete it doesn't mean it's not out there. So be very careful. So users will construct a profile describing themselves, containing information about their family, their romantic partners, and their interests. I am not a big social media user. I don't like social media. I don't need to know what you had for dinner yesterday. That is not that important to me. But I feel that it is a way of people expressing themselves. It's a way of people communicating with others. I know that Facebook is used a lot, or at least it used to be. It's funny. The joke is once your parents get on a social media site, it starts to decrease the amount of people on it. I mean, really, do you want to see your parents' Facebook account and see what they're doing constantly? Or do you want them to see your Facebook account or Instagram or Snapchat or things like that? Now, people have these profiles that it allows the users to maintain and expand their social networks. Adolescents and emerging adults use the sites mainly to keep in touch with old friends and current friends and make new ones. Social media in the last 10 years has become a huge boom. It has gotten more popular, maybe even more than 10 years, but it's become more and more popular. And people are able to see their favorite actors or favorite social media stars, things like that, and see what they're doing on a constant basis. Social media's functions, keeping in touch with their friends, making new ones, for instance, is important. The concerns here is it makes adolescents less social. It's basically what we call privatization of entertainment. It's interesting. When I was a kid, you'd see kids out on a regular basis riding their bikes. I remember riding the big wheel, for instance, as a little kid. You don't see it as much. I mean, yes, you still see people out, but it's not as much because people are inside, whether they're playing their video games, on their computers, looking at their social media, on their phones. Phones now have become the handheld computer, so you can do everything you can do on a computer basically on your cell phone. That's why people are paying big bucks to buy new cell phones. I am not that big on that, so my cell phone is pretty old, actually. I know eventually you kind of have no choice, but I will keep this until it dies. So, it's interesting too, like people use text messaging is another thing, and text messaging, it can be a problem. Some people have had issues or arguments with their friends because of text, because there's no way to portray tone or sarcasm really in a text message. It makes it very difficult. And now we've even gotten a little bit more lazy using emojis and things like that. We're not necessarily talking as much anymore. We're sending pictures. It's interesting. We're going back to hieroglyphics back in the day. So it's interesting to see how we have kind of minimized socialization. And don't get me wrong, during COVID and things like that, yes, that is, we don't want to socialize as much. We don't want to get close to other people physically because of COVID. But this has kind of happened prior to COVID. So we've become less and less social and more on our computers, our computer screens, things like that, as you're doing a class online right now. Like I said in other lectures, I like to be in the classroom, wish I was, because it would make the class more interesting. I'd be able to be more animated and have more class discussion. So it's kind of difficult as a professor to not have that one-on-one contact with my students. So, but anyway, moving right along. Media and globalization, adolescents use, or I should say across the world, are familiar with the same television shows, movies, and music. In developing countries, looking outside family due to rapid social and economic changes. So they need to look outside the family. Media's promotion of globalization in gender roles, romantic relationships, competition in sports, preoccupation with weight and body shape, and blends of music. So there can be positives, there can be negatives to the globalization of media. Media can be a good thing in our society, but it also can affect the society based on perfect example. Media has increased the rate of eating disorders in the past, like with television and stuff like that. Everybody wanting to be the pretty person that they see on television. I want to be thin like this person. Well, we've seen an increase in eating disorders due to that. Predominantly in females, of course, because it's predominantly a female disorder. Not that males don't have it, but you see it higher in females. So, why Western media appeals to adolescents? The rapid social and economic change in developing countries in the past 50 years. The youth in traditional cultures have grown up with Western media. Adolescents are more capable than younger children of exploring the environment outside the family. And adolescence is a time of identity formation, remember. So anticipating changes in their social world due to globalization and looking outside the family for information is key for them to help develop their own identity. So, any questions, concerns, please ask in the Canvas or send me an email, no problem. But we have one more chapter in your text, so look for chapter 13. Thank you so much, and thank you for bearing with me with the way I do my lectures here. And I will see you guys in the next chapter.